How's it going? My name's Frank Giordano, and I'm here to provide my theory into what I think happened in The Sopranos. So tomorrow marks the 10-year anniversary in which the last episode of The Sopranos was aired, back in June of 2007. And as we know, Meadow's running towards the diner. She opens the door, the bell rings, Tony looks up, screen goes to black. We're all left in the dark, literally. We're wondering, did the guy who was sitting at the diner in the members-only jacket go into the bathroom, come out, and shoot Tony? Well, hopefully I can shed some light on that situation. We want to know, first, was Tony shot? And second, who hired this guy? He was obviously sent there by somebody. So what I'd like to do is refer back to when Christopher Moltisanti was making his film Cleaver, in which a wise guy assassin was betrayed by his crew and killed, who ultimately comes back to life through science or supernatural to get revenge on everyone who betrayed him, including his boss. So, Christopher stated that the movie was inspired by a combination of Saw meets The Godfather. So, Saw meets The Godfather. So, let's first tackle the movie Saw. If you remember the last episode of Season 3, An Army of One, Tony is pressuring AJ to go to military school. He believes he has toughening up to do, and he needs to learn respect and discipline. So they set up a meeting with Major Zwingli. Now, if you remember Major Zwingli, he was played by Tobin Bell, the actor who played Jigsaw in the movie Saw. Okay? And what does Major Zwingli do? He provides the program details as to what AJ can expect. He states that the program includes a 0530 wake-up time, 2200 lights out, evening study drills, and no television. So 0530 wake-up time, 2200 lights out, no television. 2200 lights out, no television. 2200 is military time for 10 p.m. Roughly the time our screens went to black. No television. So, as far as The Godfather is concerned, how does Saw meet The Godfather? Well, The Godfather is even easier to explain. Our friend in the members-only jacket in the diner who goes into the bathroom, he might as well have been Michael Corleone. Classic scene from The Godfather, obviously. Comes out, shoots Tony. 2200, lights out, members only jacket, goes in the bathroom, like The Godfather, comes out and shoots Tony. So, Tony was shot. We've established that much. So now, who had the motive? Who hired the guy to go there and shoot Tony? Well, if we're going to stick with The Godfather, let's refer to Silvio when he always loved to quote The Godfather in The Sopranos. He always stated that, just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in, and our true enemy is yet to reveal himself. And I'm not talking about Silvio. He did not have the guy sent to the diner to shoot Tony. I'm just saying he'd like to quote those two lines from The Godfather very often. So, just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in, and our true enemy is yet to reveal himself. Well, who did David Chase bring back into the show? This describes no one other than Dan Grimaldi's character, Patsy Parisi. If you remember, Dan Grimaldi played both twins, Spoons and Patsy. And in the beginning of the show, Season 2, Episode 1, a guy walks into a psychiatrist's office. Patsy's brother, Spoons, is killed because he's revealing secrets about Tony. Secrets Tony wants no one to find out about. When he picks up Gigi from the airport, he explains that Tony tried to suffocate his mother with a pillow and that he's seeing a therapist. These are Tony's deepest, darkest secrets. He doesn't want anyone knowing about it. So obviously Spoons has to go. But think about this. Like, all he's doing is spreading rumors. Like, can he handle that a different way? It's not like he was, informing the feds, or he didn't kill one of Tony's crew members. He's just spreading rumors about him. But these are just not any rumors. These are Tony's deepest, darkest secrets. But unfortunately for Tony, like his secrets, spoons just can't go away. That's why David Chase brings Dan Grimaldi back in. In the last episode of Season 2, Funhouse, we see Tony sitting in the restaurant with his crew members laughing, having a great time. He's relieved. He states, "Yeah, Richie April's in the Bermuda Triangle. All my enemies are smoked. All my enemies are smoked," he says. And guess who arrives on cue as he says that? That's right, the twin, Patsy Parisi. He arrives on cue as he says, "All my enemies are smoked." And what is Patsy holding? He's holding a coat for Carmela. But if you look closely, it might as well have been Tony's body bag. That's what it looked like. Far from the truth. He says, "All my enemies are smoked." Now, this is where the fun is just beginning. Obviously, when Tony leaves the restaurant later that night, he goes home, he has food poisoning. And this is where the wacky dreams start up. In his dream, he wakes up, he's at the boardwalk, and he's walking, and he sees his crew sitting at a bench. Amongst the crew, who do we see? We see Paulie, we see Hesh, we see Christopher, we see Silvio, and we see the person who we think is the true enemy, Pussy. And then we see one character who's dead. He's not even alive. The only character who's dead amongst this crew. And it's Spoons. Spoons is sitting there as well. So Tony states to everyone sitting at the boardwalk that he has cancer and he has 6 months to live. And he's decided he's not going to inconvenience everyone with the hospital visits. He's just going to light himself on fire. So he douses himself in gasoline. Everyone gets up from the bench, walks over to see him light himself on fire. Except Spoons. We see Spoons sitting on top of the bench. And then Tony asks, "Where's Pussy?" Pussy's not sitting at the bench any longer. He disappeared. But as he asks, "Where's Pussy?" we see Gigi magically appear, shining the shoes of Spoons. That's weird, right? Why is he magically appearing when he asks, "Where's Pussy?" Well, who knows? So, Christopher states, "Well, Tone, what if the doctors were wrong?" You see Spoons and Gigi. Gigi stops shining Spoons' shoes. They look over at Tony, but the Zippo's already lit. Tony explodes. Tony wakes up from his dream, goes to the toilet and vomits. Then we start up again. He goes back to sleep. The dreams start back up, the fever dreams. This time, he's being picked up by Adriana in a little red car. And we see Christopher Maltasanti in the back seat. Again, Tony gets in, and he asks, first thing he asks, "Where's Pussy?" We then see Furio sitting next to Christopher, and he extends his arm to Tony with a roll of toilet paper. So the first time we see Tony asks, "Where's Pussy?" we see Gigi magically appear, shining the shoes of Spoons. The second time he asks, "Where's Pussy?" we see Furio with toilet paper. This is obviously foreshadowing the death of Gigi, where he dies in the toilet. In the episode, He Is Risen. So, in the episode He Is Risen, what do we know? We know that Gigi dies on the toilet. We also know that Ralph Cifaretto becomes the new boss. The new captain, I should say. But let's get back to the boardwalk scene. Just before Tony lit himself on fire, where They're all standing around. Just as Tony mentioned that he had cancer, Hesh states, yeah, they've given him until September 5th. You remember that? He said it twice. He's like, they've given him until September 5th. Well, September 5th equals stage 5. That's what September 5th meant. September 5th equals stage 5. And in the episode Stage 5 is when Johnny Sack, a boss like Tony, dies of cancer. Only for Phil Leotardo to take the rank. Also, I think that September 5th equals 9/5, a date of 9/5, which equals a 95-pound mole on Ginny Sack's ass. So, September 5th could equal stage 5, where Johnny Sack dies of cancer, and Phil Leotardo takes the rank as boss. And September 5th could also mean 9/5, which is the 95-pound mole joke. So, well, what does this have to do with anything? Well, once Ralph becomes the new captain, he becomes nothing but a headache for Tony. He single-handedly almost brings down Tony's whole operation. He's a huge headache for Tony, and he single-handedly starts a huge feud between Tony and Johnny Sack, which really makes a lot of tension between New Jersey and New York because the two bosses are really having a tough time with each other. When Ralph made that joke in the episode No Show, let's see who's at the table. Who was at the table when Ralph made that joke, the 95-pound mole joke? They were delegating the construction site jobs. The no-show, no-work jobs. Yeah. You remember who set up that meeting? Yeah, that was Patsy. Patsy was the one who set up the meeting so they could delegate the jobs, who would get the 3 no-work jobs and the 2 no-show jobs. Well, ultimately, Tony decided to give the no-show jobs to Christopher and Paulie. So, Patsy felt marginalized by Tony here. He felt overlooked. So, as far as the 95-pound joke is concerned, how did it end up leaving that room? How did Paulie, who's in prison, find out about that joke? You remember, Paulie took a lot of heat from Tony from that joke. Obviously, we know Paulie told Johnny Sack about the joke, and Tony directed all of his anger at Paulie because he thinks he blamed him for the joke and why Johnny Sack got angry. But did Tony ever stop and think, how did Paulie in prison find out about the joke? Obviously, someone had to tell him. Well, let's think about it. Who were the 2 guys who were working together while Paulie was in jail? Yeah, it was Little Paulie and Patsy. Okay, let's think about Little Paulie and Patsy. You have Patsy, who's a very clever, intelligent person. I believe he's the smartest person in the show. And you have Little Paulie, who's far from intelligent. And you see Little Paulie visiting Paulie in prison, in jail. And he's the one who tells Paulie about the joke. But come on. We all know that Patsy was the one to tell Little Paulie to go tell Paulie about the joke, in which Paulie would then tell Johnny Sack. But Tony, that's the thing with Tony. He never stops and think, who could have done it? Who could have been the one to spread the rumor? That's what Patsy represents. He's like a cancer, and Tony never sees it. So that 95-pound joke, as we know, really led to a bad time for Tony. Really gave him a lot to think about. And Johnny Sack never got Tony's approval to get Ralph killed for that joke, because he's making way too much money at the time, so they couldn't do it. But as as we see, Patsy is underneath all of this. He's the one who he interrogates it all, and Tony never sees it. The 95-pound joke rumor, and which got out, was all because of Patsy. Telling little Paulie to go visit Paulie in jail and tell him about the joke because Patsy knew that Paulie would tell Johnny Sack. Let's think about it. It all leads from there. Everything goes downhill from there. All domino effect. Ralph tells the joke. Paulie catches wind in prison. Then he tells Johnny Sack. And then from there, all hell breaks loose. Johnny Sack and Tony, their friendship might as well have come to an end. And then, who needs who when Tony's cousin, Tony B, kills Phil's brother? You remember that? Tony never supported Johnny Sack in killing Ralphie. So then obviously, once Johnny Sack becomes boss, he doesn't care anymore. He doesn't need Tony anymore. Tony pleads with Johnny Sack to have Phil take it lightly on his cousin for killing his brother. But Johnny Sack rejects his request. He said, Phil's going to do it his way. And then Tony takes matters into his own hands, obviously, by shooting his cousin in the face. And that only infuriates Phil even more. But, Tony's not too worried about Phil because he's not the boss, right? Well, that's until stage 5, when Johnny Sack dies of cancer. Now Phil Leotardo's the new boss. Now let's think about the entire episode of stage 5. You have Johnny Sack dying of cancer, Phil becomes the new boss, and you also have the premiere of Cleaver, in which a wise guy assassin is betrayed and killed by his crew and comes back to life to seek vengeance on everyone, including his boss. Let's get back to Funhouse, though. I want to go back for a minute. In Funhouse, we think that Big Pussy is the true enemy who's yet to reveal himself. The last dream that Tony has in Funhouse is him talking with Big Pussy, who's now a fish. And everyone thinks, oh, this is a reference to The Godfather. Luca Brasi sleeps with the fishes. No, he's literally a fish. He's a red herring. He's going to lead us to a false conclusion. He's a distraction. Just like the Russian everyone is so uptight about. Everyone keeps asking David Chase about the Russian, sitting on pins and needles waiting for the Russian to come back and get his revenge. But guess what? There's a reason he never came back. Patsy was the true enemy all along. He was there the entire time. So, back to Phil Leotardo taking over as the New York boss, because now Johnny Sack is dead. That's where all hell broke loose. New York and New Jersey are all at war. Patsy's in the mix of all of it, but we don't see him very often. That's just the way David Chase wants it to be. Everyone's taking each other out. It's mayhem. And then this leads us up to the end of the series, This is when we start to see Patsy more than ever. The last 3 episodes. Before this, he might have had maybe 15 minutes of camera time throughout the whole show if he was lucky, but that's the way David Chase wanted it to be. In The Second Coming. The episode The Second Coming. So we have He Is Risen in The Second Coming. He is risen. Gigi dies in the toilet. The killer of spoons, And then Ralph Cifaretto becomes the new captain, literally almost takes down the entire operation by himself, single-handedly. And now we have the second coming. Well, what do we learn in the second coming? Well, we learn that Meadow is talking to Patrick Parisi Jr. She started things up with Patrick Parisi again. Well, when did she say that they started talking again? Oh, she reveals that back at the premiere of Cleaver is when they started talking again. The premiere of Cleaver, a film about a wise guy assassin who comes back to life to seek revenge. Spoons does it through his twin brother, who I like to reference as the evil twin, Patsy. So, Meadow is sitting at the table, explaining to Meadow about her date last night in the city with Patrick. What does she state? We don't know until Tony comes downstairs, because she doesn't want to say anything. But Tony wants to know. So she says, I was in the city last night with Patrick, and this guy named Coco comes up and starts saying stuff to me. Well, first did you see Carmela's face when she said that she started seeing Patrick Parisi again? Look at Carmela's face. Looks like she just saw a ghost. This is the episode of the second coming. And they're both shocked to hear that she's seeing Patrick Parisi Jr. again. But let's get back to what happened with Coco. Coco came over, made some vulgar comments to her, and harassed her. This is where Tony loses it. Tony gets up from the table and he goes off. He walks out. Last thing Meadow and Carmela are talking about is Meadow explaining how she no longer wants to be in medical school. She wants to become a lawyer. She wants to practice law because of Patrick's passion in the justice system. Patrick Parisi Jr. is passionate about justice, just like her father. So, Tony's already left the house. He didn't even hear that. He's going to find Coco for what he said to Meadow. So he finds him in the restaurant in the city, beats him up with a gun, puts his mouth on the curb, stomps on his head, teeth go flying out. This is where Phil's had enough. This is where New York and New Jersey really start to attack each other. One by one, they all start dropping like flies, all these crew members. Patsy's there, sitting patiently. No one even notices. So, and like Christopher's film Cleaver, he's a red herring as well. The film was never really about him. It was about Patsy. Just like the Russian, just like Big Pussy becoming a fish, it's all red herrings, just leading us to a false conclusion. There's a reason the Russian never came back. There's a reason Big Pussy wasn't the true enemy. It's because it was Patsy the entire time. So, let's go to the second to the last episode, the Blue Comet. I don't know if you remember, but what did Paulie see in the Bing when he was walking in one night by himself? Saw the Virgin Mary, right? At the Bing. That's because Paulie is the Judas. The Virgin Mary emerged at the Bing one night when Paulie's walking through, because this is ultimately where Paulie would betray Tony to his enemy, Patsy. Do you remember in the Bing? Paulie and Patsy are sitting at the bar. And Paulie states, "We'll be alright." Corky comes in out of nowhere. Paulie doesn't want him to hear their conversation. So they take it to the bathroom. Paulie states, "It's all yours now." What's all his? He states, "It's all yours now." And if you noticed, Patsy has a little grin on his face, and then he flushes the urinal. He's a clear state of mind. He's sober, and he flushes the urinal. Far contrast from when he was at Tony's pool, drunk, belligerent, and he pees in his pool. He's not thinking straight. Now he thinks straight. He's clear. He knows what he has to do. And getting back to when he peed in Tony's pool, isn't it a little weird that the FBI was raiding Tony's home, putting bugs in the home, keeping tabs on everyone to make sure no one sabotaged the operation? They're keeping tabs on everybody, watching everyone, make sure no one messes anything up. Who would have thought to watch Patsy? Comes out of nowhere. He's got a gun pointed at Tony through the window. 2 FBI guys see it, and they never even said anything. No one even knew he was there. No one knew about it. So getting back to the Blue Comet, Paulie tells Patsy, "It's all yours now." What's all his? Well, they set up a hit on Phil, but weirdly it was a mistake. They got the wrong guy. Or did they? It was a fake hit. The Ukrainian guy they killed in Brooklyn, it was never supposed to be Phil. They wanted us to believe it was a mistake, but that was predetermined. When we see the Ukrainian killed in Brooklyn and then his daughter's killed with him, Corky calls up Patsy and lets him know that Phil's gone. And he asks him, just before he hangs up the phone, he's like, "Did Phil speak Ukrainian?" And Patsy's like, "Ukrainian? How should I know?" That's a masterful response. Masterful. Think about it. If he says yes, or if he says no, then everyone's running like chickens with their head cut off. They gotta so we got the wrong guy. We gotta find Phil now. It's complete mayhem. They gotta find where Phil is. If he says yes, the jig is up. His cover is blown. Everyone knows that Phil doesn't speak Ukrainian. Patsy would have given it away right there. He set that hit up on purpose to hit somebody else, not Phil. He says, "Ukrainian? How should I know?" So what does Corky do? He's like, "Oh, whatever." And he gets back to, looking at porn. That's where he is. He's in the adult store. So that was masterful by Patsy. So, what happens after that? Well, in the Blue Comet, later in that episode, we find out that Bobby's shot and killed. Bobby's shot and killed. Well, Bobby, what does Bobby represent? Well, Bobby's Tony's brother-in-law. Bobby Bacala. And this brings me to my next point. David Chase was very interested in JFK. You see a lot of JFK references in the show. Plenty of them. At the end of the show, Bobby becomes Tony's brother-in-law. Well, I believe that Bobby represents Robert Kennedy. That's my theory. I think he represents Robert Kennedy. Because it's very simple. In the last episode, we see Janice visiting Junior. And she's explaining to Junior how Bobby was killed. You're Bobby. And what does Junior respond with? "Oh, Ambassador Hotel." Right there. Bobby is Robert Kennedy. So what makes me believe that that's true? So that must mean that Tony's JFK? That doesn't make any sense. Why would he be JFK? Well, I know who Lee Harvey Oswald is. If you know anything about Lee Harvey Oswald and when he was captured for the assassination of JFK, he claimed he was a patsy in the whole thing. Lee Harvey Oswald claimed he was a patsy in the assassination of JFK. Pretty interesting. So, as far as JFK, if you'd like me to support, how do I support this with more evidence? Well, let's look at the number 20. Let's think about the number 22. 22. Well, in stage 5, the premiere of Cleaver, Paulie receives a phone call, and if you listen to his ringtone, it's Cecilia by Simon and Garfunkel. Cecilia. Saint Cecilia was the patroness of musicians, and her feast is on November 22nd. Also, when Tony visits AJ in the hospital, he states that the medical bills are costing him $2,200 a day. That's an extremely high and random number, especially for a day at a medical facility. He states $2,200 a day medical bills. Also, in the last episode, if you remember, Tony and Paulie are waiting for Agent Harris at the airport. And what are they listening to? They're listening to Denise, a song in 1963 by Randy and the Rainbows. Denise, a song in 1963. And also, we have the second to last scene where Tony visits Uncle June. And if you remember, as Tony's walking in, he's looking in, and Uncle June's sitting in the corner. And then we see on the door next to Tony, written on the door, says Ward 22. Ward 22. And he goes in and he talks with, Uncle June, and he's explaining how the money for Bobby should go to his kids, and that's the right thing to do. And he states how Uncle Pat Blendetto came and visited him, and Uncle June says, yeah, a man from another galaxy came here. And Tony says, it's Uncle Pat. It's your accountant. Uncle Pat came and visit you. Your accountant? Pat and his accountant. Patsy Parisi was Tony's accountant. Now, as far as Uncle June making the man from another galaxy comment, I'll leave that up to you to interpret. But let's also go back a little earlier in the last episode, Made in America. Who are the last guests we see in the home of the Sopranos? It's the Parisis. It's the engagement of Meadow and Patrick. And if you listen closely, the first thing mentioned in this scene, the first things we hear are Patsy's wife trying to tell a joke about how a horse goes in and sees a doctor. A horse goes into a doctor's office. That's the joke. Well, think about this joke. First off, a horse goes into a doctor's office is very similar to Season 2, Episode 1, a guy walks into a psychiatrist's office, which is the episode in which Patsy's twin brother, Spoons, was killed. And also, how I think this is funny, how Patsy thinks this is funny, is because the horse. This joke is a horse walks into a doctor's office. Patsy finds it very funny that Tony only kills Ralph Cifaretto after he thinks he killed the horse. He thinks he lit the stables on fire to kill the horse. So Tony only kills Ralph after he thinks he killed the horse. So he's not going to kill Ralph after he makes all the jokes about Johnny Sack and basically ruining his relationship with Johnny Sack, having him only to have cancer and die and leave Phil Leotardo become boss. If Tony would have gotten rid of Ralph a long time ago, before he thinks that he killed the horse, he might have never ran into those kind of problems. So that's why I think they used that joke there as well. Not only because it's a reference to the episode where Spoons is killed, but also because Patsy finds it funny that this whole thing unfolded and Tony only killed Ralphie after he thought he killed the horse. But if you remember, also in that scene, Carmela mentions that Patsy needs a refill in his drink. And Patsy's about to get up, but then Tony tells him to sit back down. And Patsy goes and Tony goes up to fill Patsy a drink. And I've seen other people mention this too, and it was something you definitely needed to see, because Patsy's wife has a dish, china. I'm not sure what it was. I think it was china, and if you see, she's making kind of reference. She has three fingers pointing in our right direction, so her left, but it's to the viewer's right. She has three fingers on the dish pointing to the right. And who's at the right of those three fingers at that reference she's making? We see Patsy sitting down, and we see Tony filling a drink for Patsy. 3 o'clock. You remember 3 o'clock? Yeah, Christopher Moltisanti's dream. Season 2, Christopher had a coma, and in his comatose dream, he goes to hell. And in the dream, he sees Mikey Palmisi and Brendan, and he sees 2 Roman soldiers and Irish goons rolling dice. And he states that it's St. Patrick's Day. Well, where do these Roman soldiers come into play? Why are there Irish guys? Well, let's think of Tony's first panic attack as a child, which he recalled back into the episode where Chris is made an unfortunate son. Tony's recalling his first panic attack as a child. He's outside of Satriel's in his father's car. He's listening to the radio. And what's on the radio? Well, he's listening to a college football game. The USC Trojans versus the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. The USC Trojans, Roman soldiers, Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Irish guys. Tony gets out of the car, he goes into Satriel's, and then obviously as he opens up the door, he sees his dad chop off Mr. Satriel's pinky. And Tony's father's not happy with him. Later that night, when they're at home, Tony goes into the living room and lets his father know it's dinner time. Tony's father has him come over, and and he explains to him, never gamble. Mr. Satriel was a degenerate gambler, Tony. And he offers this one piece of advice from his father that he's always remembered is don't gamble. Never gamble. Christopher Moltisanti's dream explains Tony's first panic attack as a child. You got the Russian, you have the Roman soldiers and the Irish goons. Obviously, you wouldn't think it's anything. Obviously, it's a college football game. It has nothing to do with anything, but it has everything to do with everything. Because Tony recalled all of this in his first panic attack. He remembers everything. It was his warning. USC Trojans, Roman soldiers, Notre Dame Fighting Irish goons, and they're rolling dice. Tony's father warned him never to gamble. But that's all Tony ever did. He just took too many gambles. He gambled way too much with the decisions he made in his life. And that's why hell was St. Patrick's Day. Tony never thought about it. He should have noticed. When Christopher told him, and then he recalled, he should have known the Roman soldiers and the Irish guys. He recalled all of it in his first panic attack. And that's what Tony did. He gambled far too much. He should have gotten rid of, Patsy when he had the chance. He should have gotten rid of Ralph when he had the chance, but he just took a gamble. He didn't do it. Now, as far as taking a gamble with Patsy's concerned, let's get back to it. Let's see it. Season 3, Episode 1, Mr. Rogerio's Neighborhood. He has all the opportunity in the world to get rid of Patsy. Gigi informs him that they have an issue with the twin. How he was, drinking very heavily. He was at, I believe Gigi stated that his source was Joey Peeps, or Joey Flies. Joey Flies was his source. Joey Flies is at the Nest. I mean, the bird references are pretty heavy here. We all know what birds have to do with the Sopranos. So Joey Flies informs Gigi that Patsy's at the Nest drinking very heavily. So Tony then meets with Patsy later on in Satriel's, where he's doing the accounting for Sunday's games. And Tony sits down with Patsy and he says, "So, do you want to be here?" And Patsy adamantly says, "Yes, I want to be here, Tony." And Tony states, "Because I don't think you want to be here. I'm not sure if you want to be here." Patsy, again, "Yeah, Tony, I want to be here." And then Tony states, "So I heard once you joined us, you bought a nice house for your daughter." Patsy's like, "Yeah, it's a wonderful thing." Like, "Yeah." So Tony responds, "Yeah. So you put the grief behind you now, right?" Tony just showed his ignorance there. He just told Patsy that he's making a lot of money now since he joined our crew, and now just put the grief behind you. Forget about it. The ignorance was staggering right there. Did you see Patsy's face? He couldn't believe what he just heard. He just heard Tony admit to killing his brother. He told me, "I'm making a lot of money now, so stop causing problems." And Tony never did anything about it. Tony thought he would just move on, carry on. Killed his twin brother, what do you expect? But, The Sopranos is a great show. And I don't think we'll ever see another one like it. And I'm not sure if David Chase is going to come out and provide closure to the fans anytime soon. But if he doesn't, that's fine by me because I think I know where he went with this. And it was a great ride. But cheers. Have a good one.